So today I'm joined by Ralph Cann and Rob Lodge. These are two of my friends and also two kind of my mentors when it comes to small group ministry. Ralph helped to get me oriented when I came into the role in Formission, and all of a sudden we were gathering 200 plus pastors in Newfoundland and Labrador into small groups. And Rob has been a friend who's kind of been nudging me towards educational opportunities and
hmm
helping me with my research as well into small group. So today we wanted to chat a little bit about this COVID season. Obviously, it's kind of on everybody's minds, and what that means for a small group, and how this is actually an opportunity as well, and maybe even a gift from the Spirit when it comes to small group ministry in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we'll start by getting you to introduce yourself and just tell our viewers a little bit about your role.
well, my name is Rob Lodge, Connections Pastor at Bethesda. Been here for just 3 years now. So, yeah, learning a lot and loving small group ministry.
Yeah, my name is Ralph, and I have the title role as small group director at Bethesda. And the small group ministry, the small group idea has been a fascination of mine for some time, and it's something I love to talk about, and I look forward to this conversation.
So Bethesda's been doing a small group for a long time. How many years, Ralph, roughly?
Well, I mean, there would be some who would be remembering situations that were very small group like, for years. But when it comes to having an identifiable small group ministry, my son is 29, so it would be right around that time when it became formalized and we had a identifiable small group. So around that time.
We chatted a little bit in our last conversation about what it means to be a church with small groups versus being a church of small groups. Rob, do you want to speak a little bit to where Bethesda is at when it comes to that and what your goals are?
Yeah, I think we want to be a church of small groups. I think we're growing in towards that area. Of course, not everybody at Bethesda is in a small group, but it's our desire to see everybody. I think long term, my ultimate goal would to have more in small groups than we would on a weekend. And the reason being is that people are inviting their family, friends, people that's not attending Bethesda into their small group, and so making an impact that way and building relationships beyond our church. And so I think being of a church of small groups would be the ultimate goal. Everybody in a small group, and then connected to people that's outside our church, inviting them to that relationship in that community.
Yeah, that's well said. I think that when you hear terms being used in your context in your church, like this, for example, it's being used at Bethesda now, that small groups are the DNA of our church. And when there's an acknowledgement that what happens in the sanctuary when there's a large gathering it can't accomplish what happens when people gather together and relationships are built, people get to hear each other's story, people start to feel some sense of responsibility for each other's care. I think when you start moving along in that direction, you're moving in the direction of a church of small groups. And now this is, I think, something that we celebrate is that the pastors now have a small group, and they're very intentional about it. And Rob, maybe you can speak a little bit about that, but it's something that I love to hear. And it's kind of a demonstration of the importance of the one another isms and the importance of how you place and how you want to make small groups visible and how you want to demonstrate support. So maybe you can talk. I'm not trying to facilitate the meeting, but Rob, you can speak better to what happens in that in your pastoral small group.
Yeah, we use a resource, and we go through a resource, and we take turns facilitating that, a different book. Sometimes we've used videos and had discussion that way, but we've had a small group for my whole experience here at Bethesda. And I started a small group recently. I've been part of Alpha as well. Cool. And we've been pushing, especially during the online piece, we've been really pushing small groups, but but not just pushing, hearing people sort of share. We do like on the front end of our service, we hear from families, and so a lot of people are just talking about their small group experience, just from where they are. We didn't even ask for that, but this is what they're valuing, and so it's great to hear that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah. And the degree to which you hear from the platform that phrase small group, and in the recent, there's an increasing amount of attention given to the small group ministry at Bethesda. And I think that's moving us more in that direction of becoming a church of small groups. We've always got some growing to do, but I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So when this season with the virus hit and all of a sudden we can't meet and gather in person anymore, I'm sure that was very disorienting for small group ministry. How did Bethesda adjust and adapt to the world of online? Maybe you could share a little bit about what you did and how that went.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead of you, Rob. You may have a lot more to add. But as soon as this happened, I feel like Rob and I, we made some efforts to get in front of it. And we tried to tap into some resources to find out what other jurisdictions are doing. And the Small Group Network website has been very helpful. And they were like right off the mark with some podcasts, with some blog posts that we found really helpful. And so trying to be in front of it, we've made some posts on our small group Facebook page to try to give small group leaders some tips. So there's some of the things we've done. And Rob, you can mention more, I'm sure.
Mm. Yeah, we listened some, myself and Ralph, I guess I had to re-educate ourselves. Ralph mentioned Small Group Network. Steve Gladen and Jay Cranda are involved in small group ministry. I think Jay Cranda is their online campus pastor, if I'm not mistaken. And they both oversee small groups. They've had online small group ministry for 10 years. And so obviously they were trying to help others from what they have learned over that period. And so we had to sort of educate ourselves, and very quickly. And then we passed that information on to our key leaders, small group leaders, obviously. And some of it has been one-on-one conversation over the phone, helping, okay, how are we going to do this now? What platforms can you use? We had to learn all about Zoom and WebEx and Google Meet and Google Hangouts and all these things that some of us weren't overly familiar with, but we had to learn to be able to help others. And so that's the approach we took. Just kept trying to resource. Here's some resources. Here's where you can go for small group Bible studies. Here's free things online. Here's 5 tips for this and 5 tips for that. And just trying to constantly help our small group leaders take that next step, and which is challenging. None of us knew what this is going to look like, but I must say, I want to give a shout out to all of our small group leaders. Just took the bull by the horns, have led with excellence. We hit almost 30 small groups online. I think it's like 29 right now. Roughly around 400 people have participated or just over. And so it's amazing to see the buy-in. And of course, COVID helped push the desire for relationship and connection as well. So all that working together. Yeah. We're seeing just amazing things in small groups here at Bethesda.
Yeah, and if I could add that, there were some early adopters, and then there were some later adopters, and some of the people who felt like, I'm just not going online. Like the people in our group, they're not going to do it. But interestingly enough, as the weeks and months passed, more and more people who said, no, not doing it now are. And so, like you said, Pastor Rob, hats off to those people. And there are people who are maybe not online, like in a Zoom kind of platform, that are being very intentional about calling every single person in their group multiple times, so that nobody's left feeling like, nobody even knows what I'm doing or how I'm doing. So hats off to those people too.
Yeah, we see the Spirit inspiring some really creative ways of building community and interaction during the season. Mm-hmm. And I love that you threw out that bouquet, because one of the things I've identified is that it's not just, the younger or a certain demographic or people who are really proficient at technology who are doing this. But I mean, I'm seeing people from every age group and, rural and urban and they're just tackling it with the Spirit's creativity. And like you say, some of that is phone ministry, some of it is online groups. Sometimes they're doing kind of like a hybrid. The hybrid, there's this new word, phygital, coming out, kind of the mix between the physical and digital kinds of ministry. Maybe you could speak to this a little bit. What have you seen as some of the advantages of going online with your small group? In what ways can it actually be better than meeting in person?
Well, there's a quite a few advantages, and I know Ralph can speak to this in his own small group. But I know, like, especially like we got a young adults. Mun is here in town, of course, and young adults want to connect to small groups. Of course, many of our young adults are maybe sharing apartments, maybe 5 or 6 in an apartment, or 3 or 4. It's a challenge to have enough room and to be able to schedule to have 10, 12 people over for a small group on any given night. But now, and also trying to provide snacks and stuff like that. Some people's like, I just can't do that, can't afford that, or what have you. But now people all they need is an internet connection and a medium such as computer or phone or their iPad, and boom, they can connect. And so the other part, of course, is weather. We went through snowmageddon. Now weather doesn't play unless it takes out your internet, but transportation doesn't have an effect anymore. And so these are all advantages that people are taking advantage of. I know some of our groups plan to, in the future, whatever the future looks like, the new normal, to do that hybrid. Well, they'll say, well, we'll meet 1 week online and we'll meet 1 week in person, just to accommodate for everybody.
And another advantage has to do with mobility issues, because there are people who struggle because of health or other kind of mobility issues. Maybe it's transportation, to get to a regular in-person gathering. But now that is not an obstacle. And I can think of 2 people. One of them is in our group, and another one I can think of attends an Alpha group. And they're confined to a wheelchair. And so their level of participation has really gone up, because how to get there, can I get into this house? That's not an issue anymore. And I'm guessing, like you were saying, Pastor Rob, that as we move forward, that we'll be finding ways to accommodate those mobility issues by maybe even having them participate via Zoom or some other platform, while the rest are meeting physically when they can't host it themselves or something like that. So these are ways that we can see are some advantages, some things, good things that have happened because of the COVID-19 situation.
So for churches and leaders who are out there right now and they're kind of looking at the next season, and we don't really have a clear picture yet at this point as to what gathering is going to look like in Newfoundland and Labrador for small group or for the larger Sunday kind of worship gathering. So for churches and leaders that are thinking about small group, and they're thinking about, a mix maybe of the physical and digital, or maybe just starting a digital small group or starting an online Alpha, what advice would you give them for some steps they can take right now to prepare to launch well?
I think what myself and Ralph did, start to educate yourself, go online. There's all sorts of resources. Like the Small Group Network is an amazing resource. We talk about, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people that are ahead of you. There's people that have been at this for years that you can learn from and grow from. And they've been such a resource to us and others online. It's as simple as educating yourself, knowing what platforms are out there to use, knowing what resources are available online. There's some free, I think right now Media even offers free resources for this time being. So you don't always have to have an account. You can have a limited access to some of their things. But like I said, a lot of recommendations comes from the Small Group Network and others who can help on our website, we have just a 3-step, if you want to check it out, 3-step, choose a platform. I got some information there, choose a resource, and then invite some friends. So you can start online, might be an easier, if you want to stay within the guidelines, that's obviously abiding by the guidelines, and then make
Preferable.
decisions. Yeah, and then make decisions based upon how you can meet together as in line with the recommendations. So
It's interesting you should say that, because my family has kind of become a church small group through all of this. We were going to church before, but now when Sunday comes, we're operating more in a small group mindset in terms of we get ready for church, we watch content together, and then we have discussion as a family around what just happened in the church service. So it feels a little bit like my small group experiences in the past.
Yeah, you can do a bubble small group, double bubble small group plus the 6, whatever that is supposed to be. Invite people in your bubble to have a small group. That'd be a great way to start off.
Even just sharing your church's worship content right now, because a lot of church, I think something like 95 of our churches right now have an online presence, and they're doing some kind of online content. So no better time to get strategic, listen to the Spirit, and say, what can we do as our family, as our double bubble right now to reach out? I know there are probably students out there right now and people who are housebound who would love to have some of that kind of community.
Can I have one more thing? Oh, Ralph, you can go.
Oh, I was going to say, right now media has been mentioned, and we tap into that. And more of our small groups are using it as something like a Christian Netflix, only there's oodles of small group resources on it. But there are other ones that are free too. Now, Saddleback offers on part of their website a series called Talk It Over, and there are some recorded sermons, and you'll get partway through the sermon, and then there'll be a question on the screen that asks you to kind of unpack, apply, think about what's just been said. Then there'll be a bit more of the sermon, then there'll be another question on the screen. So, a person can sort through, think about which one is most applicable to their context and choose it, and say to your small group, listen, why don't you watch this and talk it over? Or if there's a way that a pastor can record his or her own sermon and then create some discussion questions around it, have their small group or their people in their small group talk about it when they meet again. That's another good option.
We played that during our Pentecost service this year when we did it at head office, putting some slides up and having some discussion questions.
Yeah, I sort of borrowed the talk it over idea, but I didn't call it talk it over. I called it continuing the conversation. And so continue the conversation from our Sunday through the week. And so following every service, we put on our small group Facebook page and also through our mailouts, just a summary of the sermon plus some discussion questions that anybody can either discuss on the front end of their small group, or anybody can just grab a friend or in your bubble can take time to do that. And that's a simple way of just continuing the conversation and having a relationship.
I like it. Every new idea is really just the combination of two old ideas in a new way, right? Isn't that what Frederick Herron said? So if somebody was out there right now and they're thinking about this small group idea, but they're intimidated with the thought of leading a small group, I'm sure you run into that over and over and hashed out this question at Bethesda. So what advice would you give to a person like that, or to a pastor who's leading people who might be a little nervous about the idea of diving in?
Yeah, well, I can think of something right off the bat, and it's an event that's going to be occurring during the month of July. It's called Regroup, regroup.org. And we're going to be participating as much as we can. It's a conference that usually is held live. But for this year, for some reason, even before COVID-19 became a reality, they had already decided to move it online. And so there are 130 different sessions that are available on demand for $20, and you can watch them when you want. Now, our small group lead team is going to be choosing 3. We're going to watch them on our own time, and then we're going to get together and unpack them. So that's one resource that it would be just unfortunate if, we have this opportunity and let it slip through our fingers for such a bargain basement price. So that's one resource that is immediately available. And I saw one particular one today that I thought may be of interest to people who are not in an urban setting. And it's a small group, it's a session on small group leadership in a rural context. So to me, that's a great opportunity. And maybe some of you watching would like to decide, okay, we're going to watch it, a few of us, and then we're going to get together by Zoom or whatever means you want, and then unpack it, figure out what can be applied to your context. So that's one resource.
I was speaking to just our current context. Anybody that's in a small group, we want to encourage them to host a group their own, or anybody that's not in a small group to say, hey, would you consider hosting a short term, like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, not a long-term commitment. We'll help you, we'll supply. Sometimes we've done like a small group in a box where we've handed out everything that you've needed, and like everything down to even gum and pens and, all the resources, helpful tips, so they can just take it and go. It's just a matter of inviting some friends. They can have other people facilitate the conversation. They can, so there's all sorts of ways. Of course, I know that part of Formission's vision is to have, speaking to the pastoral, I know you mentioned pastors wondering about if they can do it, being a part of the small group that's happening now through our Formission initiative, 3C model, being a part of a group there, learning about it there, and then taking it back to their own context is a great way to get started.
Yeah, and another resource that I find helpful is one on smallgroups.com, and I use it frequently. There's all kinds of articles and some training video that's available. We've used it for training our small group leaders, and the breadth of topics that they cover is quite amazing. And so there are helps there are ideas there that you can download, read, and then think, how can we make this work here? And not everything's going to work, but you can pick a few things that you think, our context, this is what we could do.
I just want to throw this out there as well. We are definitely not experts. We're learners. But if you ever want to contact us, drop us a line, email. Anything that we've learned, we'll gladly pass it on. And we're passing it on now, but, just to try to help, dropping emails if you're looking for tips on resources or platforms, certainly be able to send something your way, have a conversation, and help in any way. I don't think... some people are intimidated. I don't think you have to have all the right answers. As long as you're asking the right questions, you'll get there, and we'll gladly try to do everything we can to help.
Yeah, we'd love to. This is something I love to talk about, and I would enjoy a chance to talk to any of you.
Ralph don't bleed crimson; he bleeds small groups.
That's actually true.
Right.
Small groups and gardening. Talk to Ralph.
I've got another idea.
Small group tips.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy. Another idea that may be helpful, and this is something that mainly in the metro area I'm a part of, and you are as well, Jeremy and Pastor Rob. We call it the Avalon Huddle, or sometimes the Avalon Small Group Network. And every second month is kind of our rhythm. We get together, and these are people involved in small group ministries and their local congregation. We get together and we talk about how things are going. We share ideas. Sometimes we'll read an article, maybe from smallgroups.com, and then when we get together, we unpack it. Or maybe we'll watch a video that are easy to find about leading small groups, and we get together. So the relationships are being built. We encourage each other, and it's something I don't want to miss.
That's something I think we're all learning during this season, is that our greatest resource is each other.
I agree.
Each other and the Holy Spirit together. There's nothing more powerful.
Yep.
So thank you for joining me today, guys. I really appreciate you being on this conversation and being willing also to share your skills, expertise, and also learnings and failures with with those out there who are interested in doing small groups. To our listeners, we're going to be online frequently checking back on this. So if you have questions, feel free to message us. And if there's appetite, maybe even a part 2 where we can answer some of those for you. Thanks again for joining us, guys.
Thank you.